The Celtics pulled game one out their ass. Can they do it again in game two? I'm joined by Jared Weiss to find out. Jared, my man, one of my favorite Celtics people. I don't know how else to describe it. Write a podcast, they're doing everything. Appreciate you fitting me in, man.
Hey, it's good to talk to you, man.
It's been a minute. I think the last time we spoke, I was actually in like we were in I was in Boston, and you came over and said hi, and we'd done a few podcasts together. And then life's just been busy, man. I mean, you're traveling the world either on vacation or wherever this team's taking you. How's it been?
I mean, we were just in Cleveland, so I wouldn't call that exactly a vacation. And
Well, yeah,
Indianapolis up next. So,
Miami
you know,
before though.
Miami was great. Miami was great. I was looking forward to New York, but that's not how things worked out. But I mean, this Indiana team is a lot of fun. So you go where the game takes you, and I'm looking forward. I think I'm going to go to the Indy 500 for the first time, which I'm not
Oh
really a
wow,
fan of Indy racing. I'm an F1 guy, but that'll be fun. It'll be loud at least.
are you a Talladega Nights guy?
I mean, yeah, it's a great movie. I mean, if you're not first, you're last. It's one of the most important life lessons anybody can learn, right? Honestly, I know it's a joke. Not a terrible life lesson. If you want motivation, it's probably good. Everyone's talking about put your best effort and do whatever you can do and achieve what you can achieve in life. I want to achieve being first. So thank you, Ricky Bobby, for motivating me to be the best.
This is what I'm saying. So you can go to Talladega and know that Ricky Bobby is one of the reasons that you're there. So you're good. Now the only question I've got is, did you go to All Star game because it was snowed out, right? So like,
Yep.
are you worried about being there with better time of year now? So there should definitely not be any snow.
I don't know. It's hot as hell right now in Boston, so I'm hoping it's some middle ground between the two. I'm still sweating from installing this air conditioner I just had to buy, and looking at it now, I don't think I installed it 100% right, so hopefully it doesn't break. But yeah, it would be nice to not have a blizzard ruining the weekend. But also, the
Yeah.
weekend has a blizzard every time they're in a cold city.
Is it just luck of the draw? Then you're just praying that it's always somewhere warm.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's not luck of the draw. Adam Silver, you can decide if we're going to go somewhere warm.
I just think they pull it out of the hat.
Yeah, there's some good locations coming up, so.
Some good locations that you may or may not get to visit between now and the end of the season. Could be Dallas, maybe. Could be
Minneapolis seems
Minnesota.
a little bit nicer right now. I mean, Dallas is way hotter than it is here in Boston. Uh, I mean, I would. It would be more fun to see a mini series because of Ant and just the energy around that team. But also like Kyrie facing the Celtics in the finals would be electric, especially with the way that Kyrie has really matured since he got to Dallas. And then it's either Luca versus Tatum in those matchups or Ant versus Tatum. I think Luca's more ready for that moment than Ant is. I mean, Ant is amazing and exciting, but he's not at that level yet, and that would probably get exposed in the finals. But I mean, what's good is I saw someone else tweet out something similar, but tweeted out after the conference finals was set. Every single year, there is one of the team is there's at least one team where the clear number one guy is someone in his prime. He's like over the age of 27. He's I think every year there's been an MVP since basically the beginning of this league, and there's no MVPs. And I mean, we could argue Luca if he should have won MVP this year, but there's no MVPs. All the number ones on these teams are, the oldest was Tatum, who was 26, like just turned 26. They're all the young up and coming guys. And it's just crazy to see a conference finals where Tatum is the old vet among all the number ones out there. Yeah. And I mean, depending on the day, you could say Jalen's the number one, but I think, at this point it's kind of set that Tatum is the prohibitive number one just because of his responsibility on the ball. But like, it's really fascinating to see that the Celtics are the vet team in the conference finals now, and I guess that's why it feels like they're the top dog left. And with no Denver out there, it seems like matchup wise they're probably best suited to win the championship now, and they should probably feel like a pretty solid favorite at this point. But both of those teams out west could give them a real scare. I mean, we just saw how Indy gave them a real scare.
Yeah, and I feel like one of the main points I've kind of been hammering home, especially about the Pacers, but I feel like it rings true across the remaining three teams not named Boston, is they're all experiencing this for the first, or in Luca's case, the second time. This is very uncharted territory for all of those rosters as constructed. Obviously, the franchises have been to this place And the Celtics are coming in not only as the veteran team, but like vastly more experienced in how to handle all the media attention, the off court stuff, implementing the game by game the game by game adjustments. So not only are the Celtics coming in as the veteran team by age, but they're also coming in as a vastly more experienced roster than anyone that they're going to face. The Pacers now, Indiana, or sorry, Dallas or Mini in the finals. So to me, that gives me a lot of comfort just knowing that, hey, when the Celtics last went to the finals, they got out vetted basically. The Warriors just kind of found a new gear because they'd been there so many times. And now all eyes are on the Celtics to find that gear. And I feel like that's where the media just narratives coming from right now, which I really don't like. But I understand it from a sense of, as you put it, you're the veteran team. You should be finding a whole new level of round about this point.
I'm curious, you'd be helpful for this because I'm on the scene. I don't watch ESPN during the day. I'm not listening to sports talk radio. I'm listening mostly to like podcasters like you when I want to get my information, um, and just like also just talking to the people involved. So what are the narratives? Like I have my narratives that I run with. I think mine are fairly nuanced and balanced. I saw something about the like Stephen A. will always go on some rant that's just like
Yeah.
factually inaccurate all the time. And hey, Stephen A is extremely entertaining. The most incredible entertainer I've ever seen in sports. But I saw him going on some rant about how the Celtics offense was like terrible and an
Yeah.
embarrassment. Like, no, they had a good offensive game. Like they played well. This was good. Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown missed a ton of threes. And I can't, you can't say at this point they usually make them. Like they both haven't been shooting that well. Jalen's been insanely efficient from inside the arc. I don't know off the top of my head what the number is, but I know with Tatum, his 3-point percentage is what, like in the mid 20s for the postseason.
Yeah,
So
it's like 26.8.
yeah, so like at this point, if it comes around, it comes around, but you're not really counting on it. But their offense is just about as flexible as Indiana's. You could argue it's more flexible because their initiation point can change. They're not as reliant on a single initiator as Indiana is. Indiana's side to side flow is better than anybody out there, and Boston plays a little bit more of a kind of staccato rhythm than a legato rhythm like Indiana plays with. But like Boston executed their offense really well for most of this game, and I think it was just a matter of you can't say their turnovers were the issue compared to Indiana, as Indiana had they had like twice as many turnovers. Like they had a horrible turnover game, which is inherent to their style of play. And Boston being careful and not turning it over is inherent to their style of play. And I think Boston maybe let themselves down a little bit more in that regard. But this game was like we've seen for most of the openings of these series in either game one or two. Boston lets the opponent dictate the style of play
Yeah.
and tries to adapt to it, and that's what Indiana did. And I can see people that don't know the Celtics well and don't know the NBA well, or I should say, don't know like the intricacies of how the NBA works, both over the course of a series and how X and O adjustments work within a game. Seeing the Celtics being a failure because of that, but if you've watched the Celtics all year and if you listen to what they talk about, they are proudly playing to the opponent. That is their identity. Their identity is they are a chameleon, and they have different versions of themselves that they go to based on how the opponent is playing. They don't generally impose their will, forcing the opponent to play their style. For them, it's more about we can adapt to the opponent's style. We just need to make sure we don't get lost in it, which is certainly what I think was the case. But you look at the way Indiana plays, Halliburton just like screwed up dribbling the ball against the left sideline in two of the most important moments of the game, and that's what allowed the Celtics to win it. So the Celtics tend not to make those F ups like Indiana does, and they're able to be a little bit more patient. And like, hey, it's a miracle they won that game. Like, it's an
Yeah.
absolute miracle they won that game. But that's how you win games in the playoffs sometimes. We'll see how they win the rest of the games in the series. I'm still talking as if they're going to win the series. Obviously, we don't know. I sure as hell don't know if they're going to win this series. I would expect it. Um, Seeing how game one went for Indy looks like they have a better chance of pushing it past game five. Indy also might get tired and run out of steam, and the Celtics outlast them, and that's how the Celtics tend to win in pretty much every game, both in a short term and a long term throughout the season. So I wouldn't look at this game as a red flag for the Celtics. I would look at this as this is how the Celtics get acclimated to a series, and then they turn it on, and once they turn it on, it's over.
And that's the level that they need to go to, right? But my biggest concern, especially with this game, I'm fine with you playing to your opponent's game plan. As you said, play to it, don't get lost within it. But I do think there needs to be a point where you set the terms of engagement just to kind
Mhm.
of show a level of dominance, if it may be, kind of that if you're not first, you're last mentality. And for me, that was coming into game one was, hey, I want to see more press. I want to see you go to some 2-1-2 press, full court press. And they didn't, but Indiana did. So Indiana were then setting the terms of engagement on those full court presses. And I was on a podcast earlier today where I said, in hockey terms, and I'm not a hockey guy at all, but I understand the concept of a power play. It feels like the way Indiana play with their side to side movement when they're looking to score on the interior, they power play defenses that will stretch you out, and then they'll put in like somebody will be in the dunker, you'll have someone around the nail, which was usually Siakam, and then someone in the weak side mid post, and they'd go side to side, power playing you until they found that gap. They'd score on you, and then boom, they were straight into a full court press. And I felt like that is what really threw the Celtics off for stretches of the game where they couldn't get into their early offense themselves. They couldn't go to their empty side actions because they were grinding to get over half court. And I felt like that was an area that I wanted to see from Boston, and Rick Carlisle kind of flipped the script early.
I think what was smart about Indiana's approach is there was a lot of press, right? Like I think I haven't sifted through synergy yet on it, but I saw they had Indiana had or Boston had to beat the press 28 times, and it was
Yeah,
3 for Indy. Um, I do wonder how much of that is inherent to that Indy runs so much that they're just already spread across the court vertically. So they just a press is really just like the play finished and they just kind of stayed where they were and just guarded where they were. So it's like it
catch a
kind of
breather.
yeah, it's not even like catch a breather. It's just like they're already standing there, so you might as well just start defending there, and so they're just
Yeah,
pressing inherently. Um, we're going to see more press from the Celtics as the series goes on, and I think Boston, because Boston is in a position of strength, play. It's fine to play conservatively early on, and I've used the punch first phrase a bunch in this. In this, I think I like to use that just because it's something it's very Stephen A talk, to be honest. It's something that people can understand. But something that maybe this game helped remind me of is that punch first may not necessarily be the way the Celtics are going to operate, even though they insist they want to, and they certainly want to. But from a game plan perspective, it kind of makes sense for them to see if they can win more easily early on in the series because they know they generally can, instead of breaking out all of the stops, all the kind of crazy stuff, all the extra effort stuff. Like you might as well start conservatively and unfurl from there as needed. Just from a one long-term preservation standpoint for stamina, because they know they have the talent to make it to the championship and win the
yeah,
championship. Um, and that's something like with Porzingis's defensive scheme throughout the season, they put him in a lot of drop. I think part of that is to limit his movement, just like limit the amount of steps he has to take over the course of the season so that he doesn't, for instance, strain his soleus in the playoffs and have to miss time. That didn't work, but and he's out for game 2, by the way. I just saw that. I mean, no surprise. I think game
yeah.
four is probably more
Tillman's
likely.
questionable as well.
Yeah, yes, it's sad for Tillman with his father passing, but the Celtics. I think it's fine for them to be conservative because they know that if they're in a rut, they can start really pressing and get fast breaks easily from there. And then that kind of opens them up for more of the slow down cross match
Yeah,
attacks, which is like what Tatum and Brown were doing pretty well. Tatum just kept screwing up until the end of overtime, and then he went crazy at the end of overtime. But like they know they have that in their bag. Like that's what's good for the Celtics is most of their game plan is not have Brown and Tatum do the special thing. It's let them do the special thing when you need a special turnaround to the game. And that has worked for them over time. And I think what puts them in better position to win this year, besides just like the level of competition and getting Porzingis back should make them the super team again, is that Brown and Tatum don't seem to need to do that throughout the game in order for them to feel whatever it is, rhythm, involved,
yeah,
satisfied, whatever those emotions are that kind of gets you feeling like you're the star and you have that confidence. They seem to have both grown past that. And there's no longer this need to go on a 12-0 run. They kind of just do it when it seems like they have to. And that's part of what's made the Celtics so much better. And especially now that Holiday is finally like exploding offensively, that's taken so much burden off of those guys to carry that way.
Holiday's been ridiculous. There was a couple of plays where he was in the dunker spot against Indy in game one, where he just dislodged whoever was around him. He's so strong for his size. And as you said, it does ease the pressure on Tatum and Brown, because then you can have Tatum be like continuing that initiating role, and you can have Brown be your off ball kind of secondary option coming in off cuts or whatever, like stampede cuts or whatever. But you can also then run actions where you use Holiday as kind of like a pivot point and use like throw the ball into him, run some inverted DHO or some catch or whatever, and then have him pop out. So there's just, and I think that versatility offensively is, like you said, kind of affords yourself to play at I wouldn't say a 50%, but like a 70% pace, because there's just so much that the opposite team have to kind of count for, especially when you're moving at that. I've lost my train of thought. When you're moving at that pace, that tempo of a game where you're trying to not run yourself into the ground, right? So I feel Holiday has been really important there. I did want to get into the Horford matchups though, because the Horford matchups to me were quite intriguing. Definitely struggled on Turner, especially when going in drop. He felt like he was getting exploited a little bit when he was being asked to contain the ball handler as he was coming off the screen, just because he was either dropping too far back and giving up too much space, or if he tried to play just below the level, he was getting kind of sealed off by the big. Then the second half, you switch Horford onto Siakam, and then you put Tatum onto Turner, and you try and match up that way. And then they just start hunting the hell out of Horford. They're isolating Siakam on the nail and kind of putting Horford into tough spots there, not sending any help, or they're running pick and rolls to throwing them hard at him or Halliburton at him. How do you see that kind of working out for the Celtics in terms of figuring out ways to keep Horford from being run into the ground, but also be a highly effective drop defender?
So this is the Caleb Martin paradox again. It's
Yeah,
it's great. It's great that we started the conference finals off with the exact same theme of last series. Joe's whole thing at the end of the series was Evan Mobley, go for it. Darius
yeah.
Garland, go for it. Don't take a goddamn three, and we'll live with what happens. We're gonna 3 point rate you to death, and it worked. Indiana, their offense is too good for you to think it's just going to work. So the big question is, what are you willing to live with? Everyone always uses that terminology. We're willing to live with this. The difference, so the adjustment that they can make, which is something I think I tweeted about late in this game, is Horford. So their whole game plan was let Horford get a guy at the nail and make that guy shoot over him.
Yeah.
And Indiana must have shot like 6 for 8 on that in the second half. It was insane. It was,
I think Siakam was 6 of 8 from that at the nail on his
yeah,
own.
it was majestic. It was spectacular nailsmanship. And so I tweeted later in the fourth quarter, and I think Horford actually did it and forced Nembhard into a bad runner, is it's time for Horford to press up on that. And
Yeah.
frankly, the one thing I was curious about is why is Horford giving an arm's length of space there? Why isn't Horford on body there? It's the nail. They're already so deep into the paint. Horford only needs one more step to wall them off, and their drive is over. I mean, Siakam is so good. Maybe it's just like you don't want to give Siakam that room because he's gonna like reverse pivot, sweep through to clear you back out, and then he's gonna jump over the top on you. So maybe that's why. And I can't remember how many of those where Turner was spaced, but obviously with Turner, it's not like they're going to just like have the center sit dunker and worry about the lob. No, Turner's going to space a three and be wide open for three. So it's not like you can just abandon him and then give up a wide open three. That's what Joe doesn't want. So, I would give Horford those one-on-one matchups more. I would have challenge Horford. It's your job to get up on them. And hey, if you got a foul, you got a foul. Like what? How if Al Horford gets 5 fouls, who the hell cares? I've never understood why teams don't want their guys getting 5 fouls. Get 5 fouls. I mean, I know Neesmith fouling out definitely hurt the Pacers, and it was a huge part of them losing the game. But like he fouls out because he's Crash. It's not because of
Yeah.
his. It's not because of his game plan. It's because of how out of control he is, and there's a lot of give and take on how valuable it is. But like I mean, I love Aaron's game, and it's great to see him thriving in that role. But like Horford is disciplined enough, and he's so good with his hands. I'm so curious why Horford always has to defend with the arm's length reach, because it's a really smart approach. he makes an impact, and it's great to see Horford giving the arm reach out there and showing the world that you do want to put your hand out in the NBA when you're guarding someone. It gives you an 8% bonus, and that 8% is the difference between winning and losing a lot of the time. But like, they were going to let him have his body on the ball. Like, they were letting that stuff go. And I felt like it wasn't responsive to what it seemed like the officiating was allowing for. And I think you're going to see more of that. They're going to have to get right up into a guy's shorts. And I would rather get beaten off the dribble and risk the foul than just giving up that clean look over and over again. Because with Indiana, with a lot of teams, I'm going to shut up in a second here. With a lot of teams, you want them to get lulled into thinking that that's their shot because the value goes down. I just think Indiana has too many guys that can hit that 18-footer that it's not worth them. Like, you're not going to really deceive them into going from what they want. I don't think it's going to work that well. The only value to the play is just at overtime, hoping that the water returns a level and they don't shoot 75% from that shot. But that's when you think of Caleb Barton.
And you're talking about an all NBA level guy in Siakam. It's a completely different talent level. And as you said, the spacing with the Pacers, you don't really want to send nail help, even in the form of just a deep dig, just because, hey, that 10 seconds or 2 seconds that you're away digging, you leaving somebody open that could receive a pass and then just shoot off the catch or drive by you. So it is a tough spot. And I feel like this is where the Celtics and Pacers make for such a good matchup, because both are so overpowered offensively. The only difference is Boston, on paper, are a way better defensive team. And a lot of that for me, and I've kind of been drilling this today, was they were in the regular season, they were by points per possession, they were the best transition defense in the NBA. I think it was marginal between them and number 2, but they were number 1 in the regular season. In the postseason, the only team worse than them in transition defense was the Knicks, which, we just saw how that worked out. And the biggest differentiating factor between the regular season and now is, well, you haven't had Porzingis for 7 of the 10 games or 7 of the whatever games that you've played. So you take away your rim deterrent, and all of a sudden your transition defense crumbles and turns to shit. And now you play a team that love to run in transition. And I feel like that's put a lot of pressure on what the Celtics are trying to do defensively, just in terms of building back out to the ball after a miss or a make.
I think that we probably don't want to read too much into the numbers for the Celtics in, was it 10 games against completely depleted teams that their only way to even potentially
was
win
transition,
against them was to run their ass off. Yeah, so I wouldn't worry too much. Boston's transition defensive principles are pretty good. The personnel for it is really good. But at the same time, we know that Jalen and Drew do make a healthy amount of transition mistakes, weird angles. Sometimes they just guard ghosts, and I don't know what happens. They just stunt at people that aren't there. And I don't know if it's that's inherent to that they are in that, like, they're in that spot more than everyone else, so they have to make these decisions more often and they just screw up. But we've definitely seen at times Drew and Jalen especially just make really weird help decisions or angle decisions that just completely screw things up. And Indiana's whole thing is, we're going to be moving so much throughout the game that you're going to be constantly making guesses, and we're going to try to get you to screw up. That's Indiana's thing. And just like with the Warriors, who were the masters of doing that, they also turned the ball over a shit ton.
A ton,
Yeah. And so it's really on you to score off those turnovers. And that's the chaos. And that's why I actually really, as much as I wish we could have seen the New York series because of the themes of the series, the fan base connection, the side talk videos, like drunk Spider-Man with a bottle of Henny smashing it over his head, like stuff like that, it would have been this Knicks Celtics series would have been the most fun series in modern NBA history.
Yeah, for sure.
Because of the environment around it. Game, like, on the court wise, I think the Pacers are actually a lot more fun. I think they're more fun to watch. As far as like for X and O people like you and me, I think the Pacers Celtics matchup is a lot more fun to watch, just because of how these two teams have been elite offensive teams with, I think, very different approaches, even though kind of the core idea of who they are is very similar.
Yeah. And I feel like these are the games you can go back and watch 4 times and still take away new things. Whereas the Knicks game, I feel like you would have watched it twice and felt quite comfortable that you'd picked up the majority of the alterations that had happened.
Also, just one thing with the Knicks, I wish I had more time to like watch them directly. I don't understand how the Knicks score enough points to win a basketball game.
His
It's
name's
like it
Brunson.
like I guess the answer is that Jalen and Luka Doncic are like super similar players in
Yeah.
how they manage the floor, and that's kind of what it is. But like I watched the way the Knicks try to run offense ever since Julius Randle went down, and the whole time I'm just like, how are they outscoring their opponent? And
They
it's
reminded me a lot of the Udoka Celtics. Just we're gonna
mm,
shut you down, and if you're not able to score on us consistently, and we can score at a semi-consistent rate, we're gonna win, but it's gonna be ugly.
yeah. I mean, they were kind of like the Piston, like the '04 Pistons
Yeah,
in a lot of ways. Just
just
like no
bullies.
no Rasheed Wallace.
And that was their problem. That's what let them down. Oh, well, injuries as well. Like,
Yeah.
you've been out the playoffs for what 48, 72 hours, and you've already confirmed that two guys have had surgery. Julius Randle had surgery before the postseason. Mitch Robinson went down. Like they had it tough, but that's New York's problem. So we leave that for we'll leave that for Fred.
Yeah,
You
we'll
can
leave
leave it
that.
for Fred Katz. I get on well with Jonathan Macri, who does the Knicks film school
He's
stuff. So
great.
I'll leave
He's
it for
great.
John.
Yeah.
But from a Celtic standpoint, and I'm very cognizant of time here, I'm just wondering when you're coming into this game and you're looking at the bench. Obviously, one of the narratives that you mentioned was you asked what narratives are out there. One of them is the bench unit and how the bench looks compared to Indiana's bench, specifically where your points are coming from. So I know some people want to see some O'Shea Brissett just to match that crate, as you said, that chaos. And the upside is you get this whirlwind of chaos that you can bring off the bench. You kind of sacrifice your offense for doing that because my biggest issue with Brissett is he'll miss more layups than he makes, right? And it's kind of just you live with it. But in doing so, you're probably taking Hauser off the floor, which means your spacing is going to be hurting. And you've already got Horford in the starting lineup, so you can't space out at the five on delay. You're already running five slot instead of running five at delay just to try and use the big as a floor spacer in the slot area. So you take away that, and then you take away Hauser to put in Brissett. I'm not sure how the value there works, but I also think there might be a time where you need to inject that energy just to keep up with what the Pacers are doing.
I think it's if you're using Brissett, you're sacrificing at the five. I don't think you're sacrificing Hauser. I think
Okay.
you're hoping. Yeah, I think it's that you're hoping that uh, Brissett's activity on the glass can make up for whoever is a low man, and you probably do that when Tatum's out there and you're keeping
Yeah.
Tatum near the rim as much as you can because Tatum's a really good rim protector now. Like Tatum is climbing up there to like one of the best non-center rim protectors in the NBA right now. He's been really, really good. So, and also rebounding, he's really, really good. So you can
He's
play
elite.
Tatum at the five, and everyone's been talking about Tatum at the five, Tatum at the five. I don't think Tatum at the five is something you do just being like, hey, we're sticking with our rotation and we just want to do Tatum at the five. I think that's something you do if you're making a tweak to who you're using in the rotation, like, for instance, going with someone like O'Shea and having O'Shea just be like that weak side crasher and like that sink in and close out guy on defense. Because, like, on offense, I think the big thing for the Celtics is you really do not want to let the Pacers collapse off of one side of the floor on offense. Like you got to keep them spaced out. You got to be able to get downhill to force Turner to be dropping back and bury Turner as deep towards the rim as you can, so you have room to kick out from there. It's really hard to imagine them making O'Shea work for more than a few minutes
Yeah.
unless you're like having him live in the dunker spot and you're finding some way to still have him be a factor in the dunker spot. But like, I mean, this team is at its best when Drew is in the dunker spot. Like Drew is one of
Yeah,
the best
by
dunker
far.
spot players in the NBA. His like touch pass ability is so good. It's like, I mean, he's very similar to a guy named Marcus Smart, but able to do like a little bit more than Marcus can offensively. But it's amazing to see how good they are when they have him down there. So anything they can do to like get a guard down there and have Drew be the dunker spot guy, like that's when they're at their optimal spacing.
And like I said, he can be like when I lost my train of thought, you can use him as that metronome guy with those kind of touch passes. I like running Drew in the dunker, and then when he relocates the ball, I like how he moves as well. He doesn't just stay there waiting for the ball back or calling for a post up. He'll go and set an inverted screen. He'll open up some space in around the rim. Overall, I'm very confident that the Celtics are going to end up winning this series. I'm also very nervous of game two because they've lost two straight game twos, and Indiana are a far more difficult team at home. So with that, and we're just about to wrap up, just give me your prediction. Celtics in
5.5. It was always Celtics 5 was my pick. Um, I think I would stay with 5.
and the
I
half
think
can be
I
the
think I would.
overtime, right? Maybe one more overtime game to make a half.
Yeah. This is going to be a much tighter 5 than the other ones that they had, but I would be surprised if it goes more than that, just because of like Porzingis is coming back, and if Porzingis is back and just even like a shell of, or a little bit more than a shell of himself, it just opens up so much for Boston.
Yeah, and it's game 4, right? I think that's what Woj said. It should be back around
Seems
game
most
4,
likely, yeah. That kind of lines up with I think what most people have been hearing.
and I'm fine with that. Jared, I promised you would be in and out within 30 minutes. We've just hit the 30 minutes mark, so I'm going to say thank you for jumping on. It's always a pleasure when we get to talk, man. Hopefully, we'll do it again before the start of the new season. Enjoy. Where can everybody find you? Because you've usually got some awesome stuff going on. You just had that massive feature on Drew, right?
Yeah. It's in the New York Times and in the Athletic. It's a feature on Drew Holiday as one of the important mentors of the NBA and how he has gotten so much of that from his soccer legend wife, Lauren. So definitely worth a read.
Awesome. Everybody, make sure you tune in to anything Jared's doing and show me some love too. I like it when people show me love.
Yeah,
Catch
show him
y'all
some love.
later.